if you're listening to this podcast on launch day, that means that Cedar Fair and Six Flags might be merged by the time you're hearing this. Hello, everybody. Alongside Don Helbig, I'm Ryan Sir, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans, because that's who we are and that's who we care about. So, Ryan, finally here. Time for the merger to close.
Yes. So just giving a little bit of background, because whether this merger closes today as of you listening to this or not, this is going to be what everybody's talking about. But Cedar Fair and Six Flags they announced on June 26th that the regulatory conditions for their previous announced merger of equals has been satisfied. So that brings us closer. They announced July 1st as the merger day. So this podcast drops on July 1st. So by the time you're listening, that's probably your favorite park is a Six Flags park at that point. If not, this isn't going to age very well, is it?
No, it won't. But everything's in line for the merger to go through. But immediately following the closing, Cedar Fair no more. The combined company will be renamed Six Flags Entertainment Corporation, and trading on the combined company's common stock on the New York Stock Exchange is expected to begin on July 2nd under the ticker symbol FUN.
Yes, it'll be Six Flags, but using Cedar Fair's ticker symbol, which that's kind of an interesting situation, but I suppose it is the best of both worlds. But the positive is that hopefully it brings together the strengths of both companies, because Cedar Fair is a good operator. Six Flags, as you've mentioned several times, is very ahead with technology and stuff like that. But we discussed this merger at length. So what we wanted to do with this one, since there's nothing really new to report, and even if we recorded this on July 1st, which admittingly we're not, there wouldn't be much to say. But what we wanted to do is go through and kind of react to some people's comments, because every time that when we've put out, pods about the merger or social media posts about the merger, people have had things to say. And let's react to some of them. So the first one comes from Amanda Dewey. This is from the Kings Island Season Pass holder group. She said, will this mean that next year we can buy season passes and do both parks with one season pass, Six Flags parks and Kings Island parks? That's such a great question, because
it's a great question. And, we're about 7 weeks away from 2025 passes historically going on sale for both companies. It might be a little early to have them all integrated as one by that time. So I would not be surprised if we saw one more year of it as is now, where, there's still the Cedar Fair parks and how they do it, and the Six Flags parks. And then by 2026, it's integrated as one. That would not surprise me. But then again, they've known since November that they were working toward this. They had to have had people working on this, how is season pass going to work? So my hope is that it is ready to go by, mid to late August, where you can buy one pass. That's good for all the parks. I'm not on the side of the fence where I think that's going to dramatically increase the price of your season pass, because I think no one's going to every single one of the parks. I think you're still going to, if you live in Ohio, it's still going to be, you're buying it for Kings Island, Cedar Point, and you might go to Carowinds and maybe Six Flags over Georgia or something like that. So I don't think that it's going to be raised that significantly. I think that's one of the fears that I've seen, is everyone thinks that a pass that was maybe, with the all park passport that they were spending, in the $200, $250 range, that they're thinking that that's now going to be $500 or $600. I don't think that's going to happen. But I'm hoping that all those, the season pass plan is ready to be integrated when they go back. And even if that means, delaying it a couple weeks until closer to Labor Day, I'd be okay with that. Just so it's easy to understand what you're getting for next year, because that's going to be the number one question, is what is my pass good for? Or why can't I go now to Six Flags over Georgia if you live in Cincinnati and you got the Kings Island pass. So
Yeah,
I think, yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
no, I mean, and this is exactly what Kings Island in particular doesn't need, because there's been a lot of mistrust and bad historical information about season passes over the
Yeah.
past couple of years. The prestige pass stuff I'm not going to get into. Is what are my benefits? Well, they're listed on the website. Well, then the website changes. And then we've got things like the all park passport. It's exactly like a platinum pass. Well, it's not, because remember, you didn't get into the Top Thrill 2 preview. So, having a thing where, oh, we're part of Six Flags now, but you still can't get into Six Flags parks with the all park passport, that's the last thing they need. I'd like to think that they came to some sort of agreement months ago where, okay, assuming this merger goes through, this is how we're going to handle season passes.
Yeah. Now I'm in the boat where I have both I have the Kings Island Gold Pass with the all park passport, and I've got the Six Flags Diamond Pass. So when it comes to renewal time, I'm interested in how that's going to work. Is it going to be benefit me to renew my Six Flags one over this? I mean, who knows? So that's it's kind of like exciting for me just to see how that's going to work out.
Yeah, well, in Six Flags, as long as I've been involved in the industry, it's had like a really weird pricing structure where you would be. I mean, I know that people have played with the exchange rate with Canada's Wonderland and stuff with the Cedar Fair passes, but literally, at Six Flags Over Georgia, season pass is $200, but one from Great Escape is 120, and they're both doing the same thing. So nothing is stopping you from buying one over the other. So it will be very interesting. I think that they're going to do a lot of pricing streamlining.
Well, they're going to have to. They're going to definitely have to do that. Now, I will say this, that when I bought my Six Flags season pass, I got it from Six Flags Great America. I was really impressed with the different benefits that you got that came with it. Let's see if I can pull something up real quick here if it'll let me do it.
Did you get the highest tier?
I did.
Okay, yeah. So you get preferred parking.
You get preferred parking. You get the discounts on meals and merchandise. You get those skip the line passes. There's cabana discounts. This season, the flash pass discounts, VIP lounge and water park seating. I mean, there was a lot of things that were very appealing to me, and it was I think buying online, it was very simple, through Six Flags on how to do it. It wasn't all these different steps and things. So I think if they take some of the benefits that the Six Flags pass has and they move that over to what the Cedar Fair passes have and vice versa, and kind of combine those two different packages, I think that's going to be really exciting for the pass holders.
I think so too. I definitely think that they need to streamline it. I think that's very important. Even my boss was asking, like, hey, when I bought my season pass, it offered me 2 drink plans that are the same price. I don't get it. So one was the reusable cup, one was the paper cups.
Yeah.
It said the difference on there, but we don't need 2 options, especially if they're going to be the same price. So what they need to do is they need to have it so it's okay. Is this good for just your home park, or is it good for all the parks? Because I think that's good enough. I guess they'll have an add-on for all the parks if they choose to go that route. And then meal plan, drink plan, if they want to do the fast lane, fast pass, whatever, just like a checklist. What do you want to add to your pass for this year? That's what they're going to have to do.
That seems to be the number one question, that whether you're a pass holder for a Six Flags park or Cedar Fair Park, Kings Island, that seems to be the number one question, is how season pass going to work.
Exactly. Now, let me ask you this. So by the time you're listening to this, either the merger has gone through or it is not. How do you feel about it? Let us know in the comments. Are you optimistic about the future? Do you think that, Kings Island's going to look like the Six Flags parks of 1998? Or do you think that it's going to look like Six Flags Fiesta Texas of today, here in about 5 years or whatever? So that'll be very interesting to see what comes. So the next comment that I wanted to read was from Jessica Cable. This is also from the Kings Island Season Pass group. She said, does this mean the Kittyland will be rebranded again? It went from Hanna-Barbera to Scooby to Snoopy. And then somebody added in, like, you forgot the whole Nickelodeon thing. Um, which intellectual properties they keep and which ones go is another super interesting thing. You know, because
Very interested in that.
the DC Comics, I think that they've gotten like an offer they couldn't because remember, like Warner Brothers owned the parks for a while, and that's how they ended up with that IP. I wonder if they have it like super cheap. So that's gonna stay. But Cedar Fair, I believe, announced that they announced like or they had signed like a 10-year agreement with Peanuts Worldwide to keep that in the parks. Um, so personally, I think that the peanut stuff is a little bit more appropriate for kids than the Looney Tune stuff because
I agree with you.
I don't think Looney Tunes are super relevant in today's world. If you have kids, let me know if I'm wrong. But I think you're going to see Snoopy expand to the other parks. If I had to guess,
I think that ultimately would happen, but I don't think it's going to happen like by next year. I
no,
think
no,
you'd
no,
be
no.
looking at
Unless they can save money on the licensing deals. If they can get out of something 5 years early and save half the money or whatever, that's going to happen. But you're right. It's not going to happen. We're not going to have Snoopy chain wide by 2026 or
no,
2027.
no. But I think you're definitely. I think you're right that um, Peanuts is the better brand for kids, and I think it's for the kids areas. I think it just works better than what I've seen at some of the Six Flags parks.
Yeah. Next comment from Michael Isham. He says, I doubt we'll see any changes before next season. I remember when Cedar Fair bought the Paramount Parks. You didn't see much of it change for a couple years. This is a bit different as you had two companies with decades of experience coming together, but I'm sure it will still take time for them to figure out what to change where. And I think Michael is 100% correct.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see, there's definitely going to be a tightening of the belt,
Mhm.
financially on that. There's been a lot of one of the things that we hear a lot about, you and I, is the budget cuts
Yes.
over the past couple of years, which had nothing whatsoever to do with the merger. But now that you have merged, that adds another component to that. So I still think over the next couple of years, it's going to be very tight. So don't be expecting, all these parks to start putting in 30, 40, $50 million roller coasters over the next couple of years. I just don't think that's going to happen. They're not going to
Yeah.
be able to do that.
Next comments from Gary Ross. After seeing Six Flags St. Louis recently, I'm worried about the future. Just leave Kings Island alone, please. Except you can add an RMC coaster. Uh, don't worry, we're going to get into Intamin and RMC here with the comments, but
I think there's a lot of panic there. I mean, depending on what your experience was at a certain time. Now, I've never had a bad experience at a Six Flags park. Every time I've gone to Six Flags St. Louis, I enjoyed the park. I thought operations and everything they were fine. So I just based it on my experience. I don't think it's as bad as sometimes people want to make it out to be. And then you see on the other side too, if you read a lot of the people that are fans of those Six Flags parks, those same Six Flags parks that's getting called out, they'll say the same thing about Cedar Point or Kings Island or Carowinds or something about operations. So I think I wouldn't worry too much about that. That it's going to go downhill this way or it's going to swing the other way and it's going to be up. I don't think that's. I just don't put any stock in that kind of stuff.
I agree. I don't know the situation with Six Flags St. Louis because that's kind of an outlier. But typically, Six Flags really does invest in the parks that would get investments. And what stinks about it is there it's just a lot more exposure because you've got Great Escape, which obviously added Bobcat, but that was their first coaster, really major attraction in a long time. Um, but when you talk about New Jersey and Magic Mountain and places like that, they're really investing in those properties. St. Louis, I would think, would be a property that would get investments, but maybe there's a lot of competition with like Silver Dollar City and Worlds of
No, I mean they
Fun.
do. I mean, you look at every year, go back and look at the different announcements that Six Flags has done over the years. When they announce, they do it at the same time, and maybe that'll be something that we haven't even talked about. That maybe the way they do new capital announcements, maybe it's all at the same time, all the parks, one big YouTube video that they put out there. Maybe that's how they do it. Who knows? But every park seems to be getting something new every year in the Six Flags chain. at least all the major ones, and I include St. Louis in that because it's a nice market.
Do you think that this would shift? Well, here's the funny thing, because I want to scoff at all these people that are like, "Oh, now we can finally get an RMC, or now we can finally get an Intamin," um, because it doesn't work that way. But at
No.
the same time, everyone was saying like, "Oh, now that Cedar Fair bought Kings Island, we can finally get B and M's." And I was like, maybe." And now we have like three. So maybe this isn't wrong. Maybe we will get an RMC, but
You
RMC,
might, but it's not happening overnight. You're not going to see something popping up next year. An RMC at Kings Island. So just relax right now and just let the dust settle, and then we'll see where everything goes in a couple of years.
would you eat your words if this merger closed on Monday and then on Tuesday they had like a single rail RMC half built named Batman in the Vortex plot or something like that? Like
Yeah,
how?
yeah, yeah. I just think based on the financial situation and where you saw budget cuts, both chains making budget cuts without that being because of the merger. Now, because of the merger, you're going to see some cuts. So I just don't see that happening over the next year. So I just don't. I know when Cedar Fair purchased the Paramount Parks, 2007, what was new? 2008, what was new? You had Firehawk in 2007, but that was a relocated ride.
And it was a unique situation because
Yeah,
they were trying to shed it probably would have been nothing in 2007, to be honest with you. They just needed a
correct.
place for that ride.
Correct. So it was a couple years, and I remember the big thing that in 2008 at Kings Island that when I went to the A Snow Coaster Con, what was new for 2008 was twice the number of trash cans, which was a big deal because the park, really stepped it up in terms of the cleanliness and stuff. But we changed the names of the ride that year,
Yeah.
from the Paramount names and that. But it wasn't until 2009, so 2 full years into it before Diamondback. So I just think it's going to take a little bit of time. So you're talking, maybe 2006, 2007 before you start seeing, um, you know, getting it back on track and starting to seeing these major new additions in the parks. Now, whatever's been already, pre-purchased for the next year or so, you know, those deals are still probably going to go through. So you'll still see what would have been on the board anyway for 2025 at Kings Island.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Because at this point, it would, if they wanted to cancel it today, it would probably cost more to cancel it than to finish it.
Right.
Because I mean,
Yeah. So that stuff's not going to get impacted. Now, what the name might be, that could get impacted a little bit.
we'll
But
see. You're right.
yeah,
But it's funny because you say like, and I guess the financial situation is a little bit different. And it's really kind of an apples to oranges thing. But if you look at the timing of Diamondback versus when the transaction closed, I mean, it must have not been long after the purchase went through that they were on the phone with B&M. I mean, if you think a 2 or 3 year lead in time.
it was late 2007 when some of the land clearing began.
Right, but by the time the land clearing began, contracts were
Oh, the
signed, the
contract was done.
design
Yeah,
was
yeah.
finalized. So, but I'm saying like it must have been within 3 or so months of, June 30th, 2006 when Cedar Fair purchased the park. It would have to have been by the end of 2006 or so,
It
maybe
was,
early
it was it
2007.
was in 2007 when it was decided that we were going to do this. So it
But
wasn't within a couple of months. It was within about a year.
yeah, well, that must have been a quick project then, because it's such a huge. People don't understand the undertaking involved with it, and it's like, I guess on the surface, when you look at it, a coaster is just pieces of steel that you erect. But you talk to any engineer, and it's like you got to reroute the waterways, you got to do the foundations, you got, it's so much. But anyway, Elizabeth Roth says, I just hope they bring back Mr. Six. I always like those commercials, although admittedly, they didn't actually prompt me to seek out Six Flags parks when I had Kings Island and Cedar Point so accessible. I hope they shoot him.
I loved Mr. Six. I
I
really did. I thought that was, you remembered it, and yeah, I mean, he was memorable. So I love Mr. Six. So if they brought Mr. Six back, I would be happy.
Yeah. So
Ironically, that song that they used in that commercial is part of the um, Trailblazers Extreme show. You hear it in that
no
show.
way.
You do.
That's
You do.
funny.
So it's kind of ironic, right?
Yeah, so the last comment I'm gonna read, but I do have another thing that I want to discuss is from the Facebook comments. Cynthia V505 said, "I'm actually feeling hopeful," which I think is the right attitude to have until you find out otherwise.
Yeah.
Keep the hope.
And the most of the stuff that's going to happen is not going to be guest facing. So a lot of it's going to be behind the scenes. You're going to see, different things. Revampings of maybe the websites, how that's done, ticketing, season pass, the mobile app, uh, those kind of things. A lot of it's going to personnel. Behind the scenes. Those are the things that are going to happen that have basically zero impact on the guest when they're in the park for what they're seeing. I think the Kings Island's still going to feel like Kings Island. Cedar Point's still going to feel like Cedar Point, for the time being.
For the time being. Well,
For the time
but
being,
here's the thing. If you go to Carowinds, you go to Kings Dominion, Cedar Point, Valley Fair, any of the parks, there is definitely a dusting of the Cedar Fair as we know it as of this recording, which was right before the merger, all over those parks. But I don't feel like Kings Island feels like Cedar Point, or Cedar Point feels like Valley Fair, or
no,
any of those
no,
things.
they're
So
not
I don't.
clones of each other.
Yeah, so I don't think we're necessarily going to.
Now, they'll all have their own personalities. Still, I don't see that changing. I don't think it's going to be Six Flags Kings Island. I think it would just be when they do press releases, Kings Island, a Six Flags, park, something like that. It'll be in those kind of things. It's not going to be something that's going to be, um, slapped all over everything around the park.
Yeah. Now let me ask you that, and this is kind of a callback to the RMC comment. So Cedar Fair had we don't know this for sure, but if you look at the timeline, ever since Cedar Fair had bad experiences with some of their intimate installations and some of their RMC installations, they haven't worked with both of those companies for as far as new rides in a while. Six Flags continues to work with both. So here's the thing, and I'm gonna give my thoughts first, and I want you to let me know if I'm completely wrong or add your thoughts to it or whatever. But um, I think that you get a company like Cedar Fair, and they put in a Steel Vengeance, and it's been problematic. It doesn't open every day on time, and so on. And then you have Intamin needs no introduction as far as like they take innovation over reliability in a lot of cases, which is a trade-off that we would take as people that love coasters, but they would hate as people that are business people. And I think that there, I've always heard Tim Fisher's name brought up. I'm not certain at all that it would be him personally, but the chain has kind of been like, we're done working with them. We're going to do B&Ms and mock and stuff like that, and be a lot more conservative. And I think there might be some truth to that, just based on what we can see from the outside looking in. But at the same time, now you're going to get an influx of Six Flags people, and they may have the attitude of, you know what, we had some problems with Wonder Woman's Golden Lasso, but man, we sold a lot of tickets, and there's a lot of people that just love that ride. And then we're putting in that water coaster thing at Six Flags Over Georgia. That's going so well. I think it could go either way. Either you're never going to see an Intamin in the United States again, essentially, or it's going to be like you might see them trickle into the parks again. I think it's going to depend on what Six Flags' experience has been over the past 10 years or so with those two manufacturers. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are next week it's a new day, and
Yeah.
I think everything's on the table.
Well, okay. So to be clear, today is a new day because this podcast drops on the day that the merger goes through. So let's not confuse
Right.
people. We got to have
Right.
some
No,
fun with that.
I just think it's just, it's new opportunities, new ways of looking at things. I think there's, like I said, just a lot of, um, positives that will come out of this. A lot of discussions will take place. I don't think it's going to be, the Cedar Fair people saying we're not doing this, and I just don't see. I think there's going to be discussions. There's going to be looking at performance and how the rides worked at your parks, like you mentioned. So I think it's an opportunity to just kind of sit back and reassess who you worked with, who you are, what you want to do moving forward. Like I said, new day.
Yeah, and also it kind of brings in more opportunities even outside of the chain because the two Intamin coasters that kind of come to mind where it's kind of like they've turned over a new leaf are Velocicoaster and Pantheon. So if there's anybody within the Six Flags chain that maybe worked with Universal or Busch Gardens and were like, no, I was director of operations at that park. That's the most reliable ride. That might carry some weight. And, I
Oh,
think
absolutely.
that if ever there was a chance for those manufacturers to make a return into the chain, this is the time to do it.
Oh, absolutely. You're right. I 100% agree with you, Ryan.
Yeah. So when it comes to mergers, we've had a lot of discussion about like everybody who's there who's at least full-time or above is probably a little bit nervous. So they're doing this thing called CYA. And I'm not going to tell you what CYA means because we're a family show, but we're not interested in CYA. We're interested in covering the upper side of your body. And if you were going to do that, what's the best way to do that?
Well, no doubt, Ryan, it's by purchasing a Tower Topics t-shirt. You can get yours for just $22. It's a good way to show your support for the show. They come in whatever size that you need. They are shipped within a matter of days upon us receiving payment. Again, just $22. That includes your shipping. Just drop us a direct message on our X, which is Tower_Topics, or you can message us, personally, or if you're watching on YouTube, just drop it in the comments that you'd like us to contact you about it. We've sold a number of these now. It's always great to see them when we're at Kings Island. We're walking around, we see guests wearing them. It's that ice cream or blue ice cream color type shirt, so it looks really really good. And yeah, I mean, if you want to show your support, purchase a Tower Topics t-shirt.
Yeah, we love seeing them around the park. $22, including shipping. So hit us up. We'll be right back with the listener questions. All right. The first listener question is from Elijah Maccabee. He said, most people know about the Reds Hall of Fame grill, but what are some other examples of the Reds being represented at the park? And how would you like to see the Reds at KI in the future?
Well, they used to have the Reds dugout shop, which was in Rivertown, in the 70s and in the 80s. I love going in there. You were able to get all the Red souvenirs, hats, T-shirts, pennants, autographed, like those baseball mini bats, all kinds of souvenirs in there. So I always liked that shop. Then you had, you mentioned the Reds Hall of Fame Grill restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really cool place. A lot of memorabilia in there. Game, worn. Uniforms, bats, balls, gloves. You had the jerseys from Reds greats. You had the walls just decorated with great moments in Reds history. So I really liked that. I thought that was a nice tie-in. When you think of traditions in Cincinnati, summertime fun, Kings Island and the Reds are synonymous.
Mm-hmm.
So he mentions the question was, what would we like to see moving forward? I would like to see a ride named after something with the Cincinnati Reds. 1975 was when the Reds won the World Series. So we're getting close to that 50-year anniversary in 75, 76 when they won back-to-back. So why not name a ride Big Red Machine?
Ooh, I like that. The Reds own the rights to that.
They
by the
do,
way.
but if you partnered with them,
Right.
so you could have Big Red Machine. That'd be perfect for the Vortex spot, wouldn't it? I think that would be awesome, and just kind of, celebrate the Reds' history, 50 years, or by that time, by the time something might go in there, it might be, 2008, 9, 10, whatever it might be. But I think that would really be something that would connect Kings Island with the Reds and with the community. I think that's just a win across the board if you named it something like Big Red Machine. That's just my idea how I would incorporate and bring the Reds back into the Kings Island fold.
Yeah, I like that idea. I like that a lot, actually. Big Reds fan here, and I'm going to use this opportunity for a subtle brag because I did take a tour. I was off work for Juneteenth, and one of the things that we were able to do was take a tour of Great American Ballpark. So here's a picture I took from the Reds dugout. So really, really good time with that. But yeah, Reds Hall of Fame Grill. I remember being excited about that. In terms of like, the food offerings and stuff, but just the amount of memorabilia and all that stuff, that was just so cool.
Yeah, I would like to see more. Them bring back some ticket tie-ins. There was the Reds. They had what they called the double play plan, where you got ticket to Kings Island, ticket to the Reds game. Work with them on something like that again too. But I really would like to see a ride that honors the Big Red Machine.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that either. Although the Big Red Machine was before my time, maybe I would like to see the 1990 Reds honored. But with that being said, a big red, I don't want to say dive machine because I don't want to wish for that, but a big red like mock extreme spinner called the Big Red Machine, like that story writes itself, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. I mean, I just think there's no downside to it. Like I said, it ties in the two biggest Cincinnati summer traditions. Going back, for even to the Coney Island days. It was the two things you did was Coney Island or the Reds, then it became Kings Island and the Reds. So those two things are just woven into the fabric of so many people's lives in the tri-state. There would be no downside whatsoever to building a ride and making it Cincinnati Reds themed. And just think of the queue line that you could have.
Make it like the Reds Hall of Fame Grill.
Yeah.
The cool part about it is you could have Reds memorabilia in a nice like indoor, maybe air conditioned queue house that's maybe under the station. And then externally, if you wanted to put the Reds logo on stuff, you could do that. That kind of writes itself. But what I have in mind for Big Red Machine, as far as like the theme of the ride, is make it loosely Reds, make it Reds in the queue. But as far as external, so people that are taking pictures of it that are from Europe or whatever that wouldn't care about that sort of thing, make the outside look and feel be more like the machine room grill, where it's like big gears and stuff like that. So the ride is themed to a Big Red Machine, but the experience inside the queue is talking about the Reds, which were the Big Red Machine. That's how I would do it.
Yeah, and the other thing you could do, say this did go in the Vortex spot, you could rename Jukebox Diner. You could bring back the Reds Hall of Fame Grill name for that.
Yeah, you could. Yeah. And then
we're just chock full of ideas here, aren't we?
Yeah, we need to cut this because I feel like they're going to do this and not pay us our royalties that we kind of don't deserve for just okay, cool. Well, enough of giving them intellectual property ideas. But the next listener question is from Jim Flugel. You may know him from the Season Pass group, but he said recently on social media, there's a hot topic of chair stealing at Soak City. People saving 4 or more chairs and leaving without using them, except as a place to store their belongings. I would like to hear your opinion of chair hoarding at Soak City and any options. Did this come up when you worked there? Like,
oh yeah,
it sounds so petty, but it is a problem, and theft is a big problem too at any water park. Because people.
My thing is this, okay? The chairs are limited, so use them or lose them.
Yeah, I see that too. I think part of the problem though is that people want a place to store their stuff. And lockers are like $20 nowadays, which I think is highway robbery. I think that if the lockers were a little bit more reasonable, people would be less apt to, just leave it on a thing, and then it would cut down on theft as well. But the problem is Soak City has tons and tons and tons of seating, but for every seat, there's like 5 people in the water park because it's just so crowded. I don't see anything wrong with you put your towel on a seat and stuff like that. And because are you suggesting that if you're on a lounger, if you get up to go into the pool, you should sacrifice that?
No, I think what happens is this: you get like 4 or 5 chairs, and people are putting their stuff down and then they never come back to it. It's just like you said, a place to store their stuff. If you had like mom and dad are in the chair and there's like, one or two extra ones for the kids when they come back over, that's one thing. But when there's just they're not even using it, I don't like to see that. And I think that if someone is, not using it, use it or lose it.
I just wish there was a better way for people to store their stuff um, without being price gouged. Because you are really risking it. Well, I'll tell you this: like this is kind of, I mean,
Ryan, I think any public place that you leave something unattended, you're risking it. I don't care if you're in a mall. I don't care if you're at a Reds game. You're risking it. So
yeah.
secure your articles in a locker. Just put it in a locker.
Well, and the thing though is, and I always have this in mind when I'm at the gym because I often forget to bring a lock. Is if there's somebody that's in the locker room when I'm in there, if I get changed and put myself in a locker and they see that I put my cell phone in there and all sorts of my keys and everything else, if I walk out of that locker room, if they're smart, they know he won't be back for at least a half hour. I have plenty of time to go through this stuff. So with that being said, if there are bad apples in Soak City and they see you put down your stuff, including your cell phone and your keys and your sunglasses and everything, and you get in line for Tropical Plunge, they know that you're not going to be back for quite a while. And then that's prime opportunity to wait a few minutes to make sure that you actually get in line and then go ahead and just take your stuff.
Yeah, but like I said, it's not a Soak City thing. It's not a Kings Island thing. It's a society thing. You do that at any park, anywhere, any establishment. You leave your stuff unattended in a public place, odds are it may not be there when you come back.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess the lesson is if you're going to leave your stuff, and that's not his question. His question is people are reserving a bunch of chairs. But I guess the answer to that, Jim, is like
I do not like the chair hoarding.
No, and it's hard to say. Everyone's situation is unique. So it's hard to say like, oh, every group should get one chair and they can put all their stuff on it because what if there's three of them? They want to hop into the wave pool and come back and then sunbathe for an hour. Like, are we supposed to tell them no? Just I guess the fact of the matter is that sometimes you're going to run into people that are completely discourteous. It's not worth getting in a fight over it. If someone takes your stuff and throws it on the ground, just pick it up and walk away and know that person's a jerk. And they probably do stuff like that all the time. And just go along with your day and don't let it ruin your fun.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the question, Jim. Hey, I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is Six Flags Tower Topics.